Hey, you guys. So I'm back, as promised, with a review of episode 3. Tomorrow is tomorrow. So episode 3 opens up with Yabushige. We see him writing a will. I guess he's under the impression that he might die today. He goes outside where he meets Toranaga's son Yoshi, who confiscates his sword before going into a meeting with Toranaga. Toranaga brings up the assassination attempt that was made last night and asks Yabushige what he knows about the Society of the Amida. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Yabushige says he only knows what everybody else knows and that they are a cult of assassins. So in my last review, I thought Toranaga had sent Yabushige to have that meeting with Ishido, but turns out he didn't know anything about that. And so he's looking at Yabushige like he might be a traitor, with Toranaga being the lord and Yabushige being his vassal. It was perfectly acceptable at this time for Toranaga to take Yabushige's life if he felt his vassal had tried to conspire against him. And vice versa, it was perfectly acceptable for the vassal to take their lord's life if they didn't feel like the relationship was mutually beneficial. It wasn't unheard of for a vassal to take the head of his previous lord to a new lord in order to pledge his fealty to them. So, wild times. But Toranaga doesn't actually plan on taking Yabushige's life. Instead, he asks him if he could take Lady Kiri and Blackthorn back to his fishing village, Ajiro. And for his protection, he will offer him the province that Yabushige has had his eyes on. Back on the Portuguese ship, we meet Captain Ferreira. We've met him before, but I didn't feel like he was worth mentioning. I don't even think he said much in the episode that he was in. But now we get a clearer picture of who he is. He's the captain of the ship. He is not a member of clergy, so he don't give a damn about none of that religious shit. That man is there about his bread, okay? He's about making that money. And right now he's receiving information that his ship won't be allowed to leave due to the new information that Toranaga came upon. But Ferrer ain't trying to hear none of that. The man doesn't give a damn about diplomacy, and he's standing on business. And he's saying his ship leaves tonight. Okay? Rodriguez thinks that it's a bad idea and tries to talk him out of it, but the man said what he said. Then we see Blackthorn getting patched up by a doctor from last night's assassination attempt. Blackthorn's being super problematic, calling this man a warlock. He's so tense that the doctors suggest maybe, he get a little kitty cat to calm down. Or some butt. Whatever he's into.
Since you are so upset, the doctor suggests we send a woman to pillow with you instead.
Pillow?
It is polite for the physical joining of a man and woman.
If he's not a warlock, he's most certainly a pimp.
Would you prefer a male companion?
Dear God, where am I?
Then we have a scene where Fuji is presented the remains of her husband and her son. This is before her grandfather, Hiromatsu, lets her know that she's going to be heading to Ajiro. What stood out to me in this scene, you guys, is Hiromatsu's her grandfather, and he's a revered warlord. And apparently her father was a badass as well. So Fuji comes from some unfuckwittable stock, okay? And the way she stares down these samurai swords in this scene, I just know Fuji is going to give. Okay, the girl is going to give, and I'm waiting so patiently. So now everybody on Toranaga's side is being rounded up so that they can be taken back to Ajiro for safety, while Toranaga stays behind. And just so we can get a clearer picture on what's going on with them hopping around from place to place, when Hideyoshi, the Taiko, when he came to power, he erected Osaka Castle, and he made sure it was an impregnable fortress. After it was constructed, he instructed He instructed all of the warlords to bring their families there and take up residence. So most of these lead high-ranking characters and their families all live in the same place. They all live in Osaka Castle. And although they may be safe from the outside world, I mean, you know, they're all in there together. They all have easy access to one another. And even though they have protocol that prevents members from other clans from entering each other's walls, we see how fickle that is when Ishido just comes crashing in, interrupting his caravan. Ishido demands that his men be allowed to escort them to Ajiro. Why? I'm not sure, but he's just trying to be nosy, child. While they're outside getting packed into the caravan, Ishido being all suspicious, he goes and checks the caravans and he sees that Lady Fuji is in one and Lady Kiri is being carried in the other. At this point, you see Lady Shizu create a diversion. But Blackthorn notices that some trickery has gone afoot. And then Mariko tells Blackthorn Lord Toranaga is famous for his trickery. She tells him this story about Toranaga being traded to his father's enemies when he was younger. And one of the lessons that he learned from said enemy is that our enemies are everywhere and our friends are nowhere. And to show your true heart is to risk your life. Which connects to what he said about his hawk in that very first episode. Toranaga, he a sneaky dude. End of story. When trying to leave the gates of the castle, some more guards, it's like, how many guards need to check this caravan? Like, honestly, seriously, why do you need to check it so many times? They've moved a few feet. They haven't gone that far since the last time y'all checked it. Okay? But there's some guards at the gate and they want to check it again. This time, Blackthorn notices they didn't plan for this, so it's up to him to create the next diversion. So once the caravan is well on their way to their final destination, they are ambushed by Kiyama's men, which exposes the fact that Toranaga switched places with his wifey Pooh. One of Kiyama's men informs him that, hey, Ishido's men are down there in that caravan. But Kiyama doesn't give a damn. He says, well, they're going to die with the heretic, which no doubt is going to create more tension between himself and Ishido. When Ishido's men realize that Toranaga was hiding in the caravan the whole time, the two different groups start fighting each other. Okay, so we got Toranaga's men and Ishido's men fighting each other, while Kiyama's men are raining down arrows on both of them. It's ridiculous. It's a hot mess of a scene. It's a hot mess of a scene, child. But we get to see Mariko fight. She grabs a naginata, and I mean, the girl goes off. She's such a badass. So obviously Toranaga's men have to flee. They end up down by a harbor and they try to escape on boats. But then they realize that Buntaro is still on the dock. He's surrounded by their enemies and they can't risk going back to him. I know I gave Buntaro a hard time. Couldn't stand that man. Still can't. But I have to admit, this scene, it made me feel away.
戸田博勝よ
R.I.P. Buntaro. And you know, Maybe being a hardened warrior will make you an asshole to your wife. You know? The caravan finally makes its way to Toranaga's galley, which is a larger boat. But in the distance, they see a row of enemy boats ready to take their asses down once they decide to try to cross the line. They're going to sink their ship. Blackthorn sees the black ship, which is the Portuguese ship, in the distance and suggests they board that boat because they're not going to be able to sink that one. Toranaga boards the ship and starts negotiating with Ferreira about helping him flee the pirates. Them people are not pirates. They're religious zealots. Okay? Let's call a spade a spade. Toranaga tries to just offer to allow the ship to finally leave, but Ferreira is like, nah, baby. Nah, baby. Because I didn't need your permission in the first place. Okay? You're going to have to come a little bit harder than that. So Toranaga offers to give him, I think, 10,000 silver coins to invest in the silk trade. So for a little more context to this situation, China and Japan absolutely do not mess with one another. Okay? They don't want to see each other's faces. So the Portuguese and the Spanish exploit that hostility between the two of them, and they trade Chinese silk and Japanese silver. They act as the middleman, right? And they make a profit off of that. Toranaga also offers to allow them to build a church in Edo, but he would like for them to sway Ono and Kiyama in his favor. Although Del Agua is hesitant at first, he eventually comes around and they agree to help him out. But they want him to leave Blackthorn behind. Mariko has to deliver the bad news to Blackthorn and let him know, we gotta leave you behind, kid. The look on Toranaga's face as he's looking at Blackthorn while he's abandoning him to his death definitely gives, I'm testing you. I think he can see that Blackthorn is not going to give up. And he's right. Blackthorn does not give up. Blackthorn decides he's going to get that galley through those boats. And he's going to do that by sailing beside the black ship. He narrowly makes it through. Rodriguez is the person who is piloting the black ship. And Ferreira wants him to squeeze Blackthorn out so that he will crash into these rocks and die. But Rodriguez decides to allow him to pass. He saved his life, okay? He's not going to kill this boy. So it was a debt repaid. He allowed him to escape. Blackthorn made it through. Everything's good. In this next scene, we see Ishido, Ono, Shugiyama, and Kiyama in a meeting. They are all trading blame over what just transpired and the fact that Blackthorn has escaped once again. Ishido blames the rest of the regents as he believes if they would have just voted on Toranaga's impeachment, this problem wouldn't be persisting. Toranaga would be dead and they'd have easy access to Blackthorn, so Blackthorn would be dead. But that's when Hirumatsu pops up and lets the rest of the regents know, hey, Toranaga, unfortunately, would like to resign as regent. Ishido, with his little cocky attitude, is like, nah, bruh, we're voting on his impeachment, okay? We don't need him to resign. But Hirumatsu points out, Taiko says it takes 5 council members to vote, and it looks like you're only down to 4. Checkmate. Now, why they didn't just do this from the jump? Why Toranaga didn't just resign from jump? I'm not sure. I'm sure there's something that I'm not paying attention to. There's probably a reason. But it's giving you should have just resigned. And none of us would be here. You know what I mean? Especially that baby. You know what I mean? They're real foul for casting like the cutest baby they could find. Just for them to, seppuku that baby. Back on Toranaga's galley, he propositions Blackthorn with the task of training a group of his men on the ways of the English, I guess, the ways of the European, and he wants him to train them on how to use their weapons. He also presents Blackthorn with the, what do they call them, rudders? Are they called rudders? Gotta double check on that. But the books that were on his ship that everybody has been hoarding over his head, saying that they're gonna prove that he's a pirate. He presents him with these books, and he renames him Hatamoto and claims him as one of his new vassals. If you guys could see the look on Yabushige's face when Toranaga named this man Hatamoto. In the final scene, Toranaga insists that Blackthorn teaches him how to dive, and he has him demonstrate this over and over and over again. I love this scene. It's so funny.
How many more times must I do this?
Until he is satisfied.
And after he feels like he's demonstrated enough, he asks Blackthorn to race him to the shore. Mariko warning Blackthorn not to allow Toranaga to win. They dive off the side of the galley together, and that is how episode 3 comes to a close. So this was another excellent episode. There were a lot of funny moments. I laughed a lot. The warlock scene. I love that we finally got to see Mariko fight. Can't wait to see Fuji fight. I know Fuji is going to give. Fuji is going to give. She's definitely, the girl ain't said no words. Has she? She might have spoke once or twice. She barely speaks, but she's my favorite character. Little bangs. Her little bangs give. Okay.
Not the banging, the banging. Oh, 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 oh. Fuck no.
I felt bad for Hirumatsu in this episode. He lost his baby boy. He lost his son. Mariko lost her husband, but she didn't seem to care. She looked a little relieved, to be honest. But that last little stare down before Buntaro presumably dies, we don't know. Yeah. In that moment, before he charges back towards the enemy combatants, the look he gave Mariko, as if there was just so much he didn't get to say to her and that he wished he could have said to her. It made me emotional, you know. Still don't like his ass, but that was such a good scene. This is such a good show. The cinematography is amazing. The actors are amazing. The set design. Ugh, I love this little show. So that's all I have for episode 3. Episode 4, The Eightfold Fits, airs tonight. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications when I release a new video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.